The end of apartheid in South Africa in 1994 marked a significant turning point in the country's history. It symbolized the dismantling of institutionalized racial segregation and the beginning of a new era of democracy and equality. However, the question that persists among many researchers, policymakers, and citizens is, has poverty increased or decreased since the end of apartheid? To answer this, it is essential to analyze various economic and social indicators, contextual factors, and policy impacts over the past 3 decades. Apartheid, the system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination, was implemented by the National Party government from 1948 until 1994. Under this regime, the majority black population faced systemic inequalities, restricted access to quality education, employment, healthcare, and land ownership. These policies entrenched economic disparities and entrenched poverty among the black majority. The apartheid era was characterized by significant economic growth in certain sectors, but this growth largely benefited the minority white population and a small elite, leaving the majority of black South Africans in poverty. According to the World Bank, in 1993, just before the end of apartheid, approximately 63% of the South African population lived below the national poverty line. Since 1994, South Africa has undergone substantial political, social, and economic reforms aimed at redressing past inequalities. The government adopted policies such as Black Economic Empowerment (BEE), social welfare programs, and efforts to improve access to education and healthcare. However, the country has also faced considerable economic challenges, including slow GDP growth, high unemployment, and inequality. Poverty trends in the post-apartheid era. The early 2000s marked a period of economic growth driven by commodity booms and increased foreign investment. During this time, poverty rates decreased significantly. According to the World Bank, the percentage of people living below the national poverty line dropped from 63% in 1993 to approximately 55% in 2008. Similarly, the World Bank's data indicates that between 1994 and 2008, South Africa experienced notable reductions in extreme poverty, driven by social grants, expansion of access to education, and economic growth. Despite these gains, income inequality in South Africa remains among the highest globally. The Gini coefficient, a measure of income inequality, has consistently stayed above 0.6 since the 1990s, indicating a highly unequal society. Wealth distribution continues to favor the white minority and the affluent black middle class, while large segments of the population remain in poverty. The global financial crisis of 2008 and subsequent economic downturns slowed progress. Unemployment surged, reaching over 30% in recent years, and economic growth stagnated. According to Statistics South Africa, the unemployment rate stood at around 34.5% in 2021, with youth unemployment soaring above 60%. High unemployment and sluggish growth have hindered poverty alleviation efforts. Recent data and trends, COVID-19 pandemic impact. The COVID-19 pandemic, which began in 2020, exacerbated existing socio-economic issues. Lockdowns and economic contractions led to increased unemployment and poverty. The World Bank estimates that the pandemic pushed an additional 2 million people into poverty, reversing some gains made earlier. Current poverty levels. Recent statistics show that approximately 18 to 20 million South Africans still live below the national poverty line, which is defined as earning less than R1,268 per month, about $85 USD. The proportion of people living in multidimensional poverty, considering factors such as health, education, and living standards, remains high. Government responses and social grants. South Africa's social grant system, one of the most extensive in Africa, provides monthly support to millions of vulnerable households. These grants have played a significant role in reducing absolute poverty, especially among children and the elderly. However, critics argue that these measures are insufficient to eradicate deep-rooted poverty and inequality. Several structural factors contribute to ongoing poverty in South Africa. High unemployment rates prevent many from earning a livelihood. Skills mismatch and lack of access to quality education limit employment opportunities. While access to education has improved, disparities in quality and outcomes persist, affecting social mobility. Wealth concentration among a small elite hampers broad-based poverty reduction. Land inequality and limited access to productive resources continue to hinder economic participation for marginalized groups. Fluctuations in commodity prices and global slowdowns impact South Africa's resource-dependent economy. Has poverty increased or decreased? Considering the data and trends, the answer is nuanced. Decreased slightly in early post-apartheid years. There was a notable decline in poverty levels during the early 2000s, driven by economic growth and social programs. Plateau and slight increase since 2010. From around 2010 onwards, progress has stagnated or reversed in some measures. The economic slowdown, structural issues, and recent crises like COVID-19 have led to persistent or increased poverty levels among vulnerable populations. Overall perspective, while there has been some progress since apartheid's end, especially in reducing extreme poverty and expanding social services, the depth and breadth of poverty remain significant. The high unemployment, inequality, and recent setbacks suggest that poverty levels have not been eradicated and, in some areas, may have increased. In summary, poverty in South Africa has experienced both decline and stagnation since the end of apartheid. The initial post-1994 years saw tangible improvements, primarily due to economic growth and social policies. However, persistent structural inequalities, high unemployment, and recent economic shocks, including the COVID-19 pandemic, have prevented the complete eradication of poverty. Today, millions of South Africans continue to live under challenging conditions, and addressing these issues remains a key priority for policymakers. Subscribe to our channel for more in-depth analysis on socio-economic issues, global developments,